Hey, everybody, welcome to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask you that you would subscribe and leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, today we're going to talk about how to build a business that has no rivals. In this episode, we're going to be talking about leaving the red ocean in 2025 as the year closes. And, as the new year comes in, you want to start looking for those blue ocean, untapped market spaces. So with that, I want to go ahead and bring on our co-host, Joseph. Joseph, say what's up and take it away.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? So today I wanted to just kind of continue with our, theme of trying to pivot for the new year. I typically like to start planning in November, then really get like a good plan in December, and then make January like my execution month, right? So in saying that, like Henry said in the introduction, you kind of want to pivot out of any of the red ocean, right? This is all coming from the book Blue Ocean Strategy. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, but in case you haven't, this episode will really help you understand ways to find a blue ocean, as they say, which is a untapped market, or finding your own space in the new year, in the new landscape, right? So we'll be discussing techniques and just ways to go about it for the new year.
There's a lot of untapped markets out there, so I think too many times we do stay in that red ocean mentality. It's kind of like a scarcity mindset, so that's why we're encouraging, if you felt stuck throughout this year, this new upcoming year, prepare now so you could start looking for those untapped, market spaces, and start working on, a strategic plan, for clarity for the new year, don't be like afraid to try new things, the old ways, obviously, if they didn't serve you, it's time to let them go and, find the new opportunities.
Exactly, yeah, and we'll be going into this, throughout the episode, but like Henry just said, right, finding your opportunity, or the sixth path strategy. And so don't guess your way into the new year. Just reconstruct market boundaries, or reconstruct just look at the landscape of whatever niche that you're in or want to get into, and like we've talked about before, find the gaps in the market, right? And so this is to help you with executing your Q1 launch, right? You don't need to be on top of things quarter one, but it does help to really start, the new year on a good foot, right? So I want to go into like our topic, which is the new year pivot, right? And so, it's a good idea. It's something that I have been doing for the past, 3-4 years now, where I'll really analyze my year. I used to at one point actually write a letter to myself about the previous year and what I want the new year to be. And then I would open it up on the last day of the year. But, it's more so now what I do is just kind of like analyze my year, right? And so if you're an entrepreneur, which most of you are, you can really audit how your year went, right? Where did you lose money? Where did you gain money, right? The good and the bad, and really just get a feel for where you're losing profit because you're in a red ocean.
Right. And that's the thing, sometimes you're in that red ocean and maybe you don't even see it, so that's why analyzing your year is going to help you to, to see where you've been and, help you to get to where you want to go, usually in the fourth quarter, this is kind of where you analyze everything, which is where we're at in 2025 at coming to the end, so this is the time to take, to start planning for quarter one of, 2026, and it's just finding that what's holding you back, so to speak, so that's what the red oceans is, so we just encourage, that you take a look at that now and start making the changes, so that way when the new year comes, you're not getting ready, you're already, hitting the market, hitting the road, running.
Exactly. And so, as we keep saying, try to find the gap in the market. There's always changes, especially right now. We're in a period of change, not only, with the state of affairs, but also just like, AI is really shaking things up. And so there's definitely a gap in the market. You just have to look for it. You got to, find the gaps by doing what we said in previous episodes. And so, you kind of want to create a New Year's resolution for your brand, right? And so what I mean by that is kind of, what do you want this new year to be for you, right? And just really stick to it. So, my New Year's resolution this year was to get out of my own way. And, I wasn't perfect about it, but I've done a really good job about getting out of my own way. And that's been my tagline for the whole year. And so you want to create a tagline or a methodology or whatever you want to say for the new year. That way you can stick to that and have that be a guidepost for you.
Absolutely. And that moves us into our next point as we're talking about like mining the hidden gold. I think a lot of times the reason why, we stay stuck and stagnant in our growth and in the entrepreneur journey is because, we get so comfortable with the familiar, so what are we talking about? We're talking about getting outside of the familiar zone and going after, the different opportunities that you had, because in the past, maybe you've been in contact with other, customers, referrals, or some way, somehow you got their contact information, so these are like your non-customer gold mine that you can, revisit and, try to use that for Q1 to, help you get the business growing, so like maybe you ask yourself why people didn't buy from you this year or this season, and see why and what you can offer. So that's what we're talking about, just mining the hidden gold.
Exactly, right. And then also look across your alternatives, right? How to still market from, or market ideas, I should say, from industries you didn't think were competitors, right? So basically, a good example of that is, how can you, if you're a dog groomer, how can you bring in people that have other animals, right? Maybe there's a influx of people that have ferrets or something like that, And so how can you get those people that have ferrets to go with your services or whatever the case may be for you, right? So where can you find like an adjacent market that, that you haven't really tapped into, right? And so, you really want to create a strategy canvas, and, that you could do that on an app, a piece of paper. A piece of paper would probably be the most, the simplest way to do it, but there's a lot of different tools that you can use out there. And so, just like really exercise mapping out the current landscape and really try to like plot your escape route or what I would say your path to success for the year, right? And so that's kind of like what Henry was saying, really try to map out like where did you lose profit because you lost people. And so someone that I know, he was saying that he had a 90% bounce rate on his website. He would direct his TikTok traffic to his website, and 90% of people who went on his website, they just left it, right? And so that's 90% of people not buying his product. So now he has to figure out, okay, well, what made them leave, or how can I really capture that audience? And so, doing things like that will really point you in the right direction as to how to improve for the new year.
Absolutely. And that's just, strategizing, so the canvas way, that works for me. I'm old school. So, I do that too on the paper, and just kind of like, all right, this is my main thing, but what are all the branches that I can, pull from that and, try to niche down and stuff like that. And, finding different ways, definitely, like Joe just said, directing everybody to one source. Sometimes, that doesn't meet everybody's needs. So you got to kind of like, be a little bit agile when it comes down to, mining the hidden gold and, be creative. That's the reality, and I think too many times when, you get caught up in that red ocean mentality. You're no longer creative. You're more kind of like, feast or famine, and you think like scarcity mindset where it's like there's not enough for everybody to go around. And that's kind of where the blue ocean strategy takes you to a different thing. And you realize that like, no, there's this vast amount of resources available for everybody. It's just being creative. So part of the creative process is visualizing and strategizing, a plan now. So that way by Q1, you're ready to rock and roll.
Exactly. And again, this is what pretty much the past couple of episodes have been all about, is because, we really want to encourage everyone listening to not start your new year on January 1st. We really want you to start your new year, November, December, right? I mean, obviously it's a little hard because the holiday season is coming around. You got to focus on that. You probably have family over, you're probably cooking a lot. And so obviously it's a little bit hard to start planning for your new year, but we still do have downtime. And so but thinking about these things, even if you don't do like all of the things that we're talking about, but just put your brain or put your mind in a space to where you're asking yourself these questions before January 1st. That way, when January 1st comes around, you're already ready to start doing what you need to do for the new year.
So don't wait. That's our point, is don't wait. Now's the time, so start figuring out the ways to mine for that gold. And then that takes us, from, a resolution, making your New Year's resolutions, to making revenue happen for your business, and that's going to come by doing all these things. But, preparation, those that, fail to plan, they plan to fail. So like plan your plan, then work your plan. And, with that, it's like, the blue ocean sequence is, make a checklist, to ensure your new offer, and the pricing and everything that goes along with it is aligned, before you launch things, so this is the time you want to take to, just look at everything from a bird's eye view and then say, okay, where can I tweak these things and make it better? And in doing so, you're going to reap the benefits. And, the great thing about the quarters is like, you could put in a quarter or 2 quarters, of the year in and see what's working. And if it's not, then, you pivot and you continue to what is working, and that's how you're going to, succeed and find that success, based on the work and the plan that you put in now.
Exactly. Yeah. And I kind of want to go off on a quick little side tangent. But one thing that it just came to my mind, so I want to talk about it. Henry was talking about like if your offer has utility, also as far as your prices and your costs, right? That cost is really a big one, because how much does it take you to produce something, and how much does it take you to sell it, right? Sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we try to be very humble, and we try to, really be fair and all of that. But sometimes, depending on what market you're in, that fair price gets overlooked for a cheap price, right? So, we are in a little bit of a economic downturn, but that shouldn't really stop you from upping your price $5, right? Or depending on your service, maybe by 20% or 10%, right? That will just increase your margins, as well as it will give your brand kind of a more validity, because sometimes people are like, oh well, I get what I pay for, right? So you're like, okay, shoot, you get what you pay for, right? So it's like a big thing that I really thought about was, are you being fair to yourself, right? As entrepreneurs, we want to be fair to our clients, but sometimes that price will bite us in the butt, because it's like, oh, well, this guy charges $200 when everyone around him charges $500. Well, what's wrong with that guy? He's probably doing a really bad job, right? So, I would just say, take a look at that, because that could be a leaky hole in your system.
Absolutely. And talking about like costs like that, when you're starting out, it is kind of tough to figure out like what is a good price range. So, but today with the technology and all the tools available to you, you can find out, the general rate of, what it is you're trying to sell, the service or product. So it helps you to, create a good price point, But yeah, Joe's absolutely right. When it comes down to it, a lot of times, even when you're just starting out, you kind of feel like, I don't know if I should charge more, or, I got to do this because I got to get my foot in the door and my name out there so people know. And I agree. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's harder when you start at a low price to try to raise your rates, because then you upset the customer, because they're so used to paying, well, you've always been this and you've been good and we're happy with this, so then that's kind of where it puts you in that, red ocean mindset where you're like, all right, well, I better stay here because the competition is so fierce. But when your product or service is quality, you don't have to worry about that. Your confidence in what you're doing and things like that. So you could price accordingly, so I give you that permission to price it accordingly, because that is one of the biggest things. I mean, I've done jobs before for cheap just to get the job, because I was trying to do this. And then what ends up happening is you're actually training your client to that low rate, and when you change things, it makes it awkward, I'll say, in the relationship. So price accordingly, test your market, find out, and see what the best strategy is for you. And that's going to help you along the way.
Exactly, yeah. And just really create like a strategy like we're talking about, right? Like, how do you align your internal messaging so that your team or your customers naturally pull your new product into the market, right? So, I can't really think of a good idea or a good example of that off the top of my head, but if you're trying to go for a reliable and a reliable service, right? What messaging can you have around your brand, or your product that you want to launch a new product or service? How can you really instill that that message through your marketing, right? And so that's a very big thing. Sometimes you will have marketing, or you'll have wording on your website that says one thing, but your actual words whenever you're talking about your product are two different things, right? So just making it really unified and really pinned down, like what is your messaging, what is the logos and ethos of your brand. That way, you could really it just makes things a lot easier for you and the customer.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think, for to get people to recognize your product, on the market and stuff like that, it's when others talk about it, right? So like we're in an era now where everybody is fighting for your attention, So like I think probably one of the best strategies that have been created in the last few years is like a TikTok shop, They're doing live, let me show you this product, let me show you this, let me show you that. So I think like going forward, it's going to be video content. So like these are some of the tips, that I would recommend. Is like, not just a website, because like Joe shared earlier in the podcast, like this other individual is just directing everybody to his website, but it didn't go any further, So there has to be, when you're branding, you have to have many facets, right? So you have to have your business website. Okay, cool. You have your website, you have your TikTok, you have your YouTube. And, this is kind of where, a lot of people are timid. They're scared because they don't, I don't look good on video. I don't do this. I don't do that. But like, there's no excuse anymore with AI, so you can create a lot of things. There's a lot of people that enjoy doing this content stuff, so you record and they can, edit that up for you. And that's going to help you in your market. So these are some of the tips and tricks that, I would recommend, is that don't just stay in that red ocean mentality, it's a blue ocean. Get out there, and put yourself out there and put your message out there.
Exactly, yeah. And just really try to find your new market, like what we said at the very beginning, right? And so, you just really want to, you know, just make a pivot, find your hidden gold, and really make your resolution into revenue.
Good stuff. Okay, guys. So with that, this is how, you want to start your new year with the blue ocean strategy. Be strategic, with clarity for your new year. Find the opportunities, that are there and begin executing day one, on January 1st. Don't wait for the first week after everything, just get to it. Actually get to it now. Start writing everything out. This should be your new year pivot, and start mining for hidden gold. And, with that, I want to bring Joe back on if he has any closing thoughts or ideas.
Yeah, I just want to, encourage everyone to just, if you get anything away or take away anything from this episode, just try to, look back and reflect on the past year and what did you like about it and what do you want to improve about it, right? Not what you didn't like about it, but what do you want to improve about it or improve on, right? And so with that, I want to give a shout out to our community. If you're an entrepreneur tired of doing it all alone, we have a community that combines practical self-growth tools as well as community support and weekly structure to help you stay focused and follow through with whatever you're trying to do. So that's at backtobrilliance.com. If you scroll down to our community tab, they'll be linked up with like-minded people like you.
Well said. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to our podcast. We ask that, wherever you listen, subscribe, leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. Till the next time, stay blessed.
Bye-bye.